Well, ladies and gentlemen, we do have some great news for Donald Trump and the Republicans here. A Pennsylvania data drop with the early voting opening. You've got the mail in requests. We're going to analyze these numbers and really just talk about why Pennsylvania is trending towards the Republicans. You do have the voter registration. Republicans have cut it in half. It was around 800K. It's like 400 or 350K at this point. They only lost the state by 80K. Voter registration is not everything, but it's an extremely encouraging number for Republicans. You take a look at a state like Florida and how that number's moved. Republicans now lead that by like 1.2 million. But take a look at this. This is the mail-in ballot request, Republicans versus Democrats. Some things, some qualifiers before I talk about these numbers. Both Republicans and Democrats inevitably were going to have less mail-in ballot requests in 2024. That's obvious with the pandemic raging on in 2020 versus 2024. But you are comparing, wow, we are 50 days out, I guess, if this is correct. 50 days out from the 2024 election versus the 2020 election. Republicans sitting around 377,000 requests. Now they're down to 321. So that's a difference, I want to say, of around 56,000 less in 2024. With the Dems, it's at 1.1 million. Not surprising. You'd say, well, this is a swing state. How is there that much of a discrepancy? Remember, Trump told people not to vote by mail, Republicans, because he didn't trust it. And now he's changed his tune, although I don't really think it matters. I think mail-in votes are going to be, they're still going to be consequential, don't get me wrong, but this is a situation where you're not dealing with the pandemic. Trump was correct in being wary of mail-in votes. That is why European countries have banned mail-in voting, because of rampant voter fraud. So Trump is right on that, but you do have to tell people they need to just vote. That's it. All that matters is you vote. It does, you don't force anything. If you cannot, if you're working or whatever, just do the mail-in. It's not a big deal. We just need the votes. So, and that's what Trump's been doing. But you do have the Democrats sitting at 1.1 million. So there's going to be that huge discrepancy because Democrats were, much more higher propensity to go and do the mail-in at 1.1 million. Now they're down to slightly less than 800K. So that is a difference, a decrease in terms of the requests at the same time of 303,000. Now there are a number of things at play here. But if you look at this, you go from 377 to 321 versus 1.1 to 800. It's a big difference. It's about 250K more Democrats not requesting mail-in ballots than Republicans. Now, I will say, again, the Democrats, and specifically younger people, had a much higher propensity, if you are on the left, to request mail-in votes and be scared to go out to vote than Republicans. So part of this is some Democrats, I'm sure, not needing, that are probably younger, not scared off in 2024 because there's, the pandemic's kind of in the rearview mirror versus where it was in 2020. So that's part of it, to where they're not requesting it. But I do think these are really, really good numbers. I mean, it's almost too big to ignore. 303K less, and with Republicans, it's only like 57K or 56K. This means Trump is up 247K in mail-in requests compared to where he was at this time in 2020. Well, yes, but you have to be careful on that, because a lot of those Democrats are just going to be voting in person likely rather than by mail, because they all got scared in 2020. It's not necessarily a 247K lead, because imagine if that was the case, he lost it by 80K and he'd easily win it then. I still think he's going to easily win Pennsylvania, by the way, but I'm just saying it's not an apples-to-apples comparison when you're doing that, because some of those Democrats that didn't request ballots are just going to be voting in person because they're not scared off by the pandemic now that it is 2024. But yeah, he lost it by 80K, and it's very important. Pennsylvania, the most important state. What we've been saying, it's Pennsylvania, 19 electoral votes. It's Georgia, 16 electoral votes. It's North Carolina, 16 electoral votes. If Trump wins those three states, he wins the election. You notice Kamala Harris and liberals spinning it now like North Carolina is this huge swing state. They have to do that because they've lost the math. Remember in 2020 and 2016, the Democrats had 400 different paths. They would always say that, Biden has so many more paths to the White House than Trump. In 2016, Hillary had so many more paths to the White House than Trump. They don't say that anymore because now Trump has more paths because he's turned both Ohio and Florida. That's like 46, 47 electoral votes now that are not going to be contested. They're not swing states. It's going to Trump. And so now they have to make states like North Carolina these big swing states. And it's the same thing with Georgia. I thought there was no way of Georgia flipping. And to be fair, I mean, it took like heaven and earth where they got just absurd high voter counts in inner cities to flip that state because of Atlanta and the counties like DeKalb. They were able to flip that state It's shocking. But if Trump can take back Georgia, where he only lost it by 0.3, you take Pennsylvania, you take North Carolina, you win the election easily. You don't need Arizona's 11 electoral votes. You don't need Nevada's, 6 electoral votes, 5 electoral votes. It becomes very easy with these big three because it's 19 electoral votes with Pennsylvania, 16 and 16 with Georgia, and with North Carolina. And so Pennsylvania is a huge state to talk about, and that's why Trump and Kamala, they're going to massive rallies in Pennsylvania. It seems like there's always an event happening in Pennsylvania. It is the most important state of 2024, but Trump can still win the election without Pennsylvania, and technically Kamala could as well, but it'd be a lot easier for Trump if he loses Pennsylvania. If he's able to hold on to North Carolina, he takes back Georgia, it's still extremely doable because then you just need to find like 18 or 19 electoral votes. You could find that with Nevada and Arizona and then lose the entire Rust Belt and still win the election. So there are a number of paths for Trump, but overall, these are good numbers. And it's not just this, it's also when you factor in the voter registration and the crazy epic drop we've seen where now Republicans are only down by like 350K. Last year, you say at the night of the election, they were down 800K. They lose by 80K. Now they're only down by 350. This is going to be a very, very, very close election, and it is trending towards Trump. And the polls, I saw a comparison of where Trump's at right now versus where he was in 2020 and 2016 versus Hillary and versus Biden, and he's in a much better spot because Pennsylvania right now is like tied. You've got Nate Silver and others saying Trump's got like a 70% chance to win Pennsylvania. This is a state that Trump should win based on all of the internal metrics, based on everything. And there was a crap poll that came out that had, I think the key is making sure that men overwhelmingly vote Trump and outnumber the women that vote for Harris. And I think that's going to happen because men have been alienated by the left and they've been told that they're devils. And so that's going to be good. And it's going to help Trump out significantly. But this is a big data drop. It's not the exact apples to apples, wow, she loses 300K votes. That's not how it works because you could also get an uptick in the people that request, maybe there's a different pattern to where they request a little bit later, although that would be unlikely considering in 2020, the mail-in ballots were all the rage and people wanted them really early. But this is good news. This is undoubtedly good news in Pennsylvania. And these are going to be real votes. I mean, this is how it seems like whenever we get real numbers. Same thing with North Carolina and the early mail-in ballots there. And certainly North Carolina would be a state that Trump, he won it in 2016. He won it in 2020. Libs are going to say, well, he lost 2 points from 2016 to 2020. He won it by 3 and then he won it by 1. But his numbers overall are so much better than they were in 2020 or 2016. Him losing it in 2024, it seems very far-fetched, and this is why they're having to do this and cope because they've lost both Florida and Ohio, so now they're trying to force a square peg into a round hole and say that, oh, she's going to win North Carolina. They have to say that because they've lost other swing states, and their math is shrinking. And you lose North Carolina, now you're really up against it. And so now you really need to run the table if you're Kamala, and that's why they're turning North Carolina into this big swing state like she's going to win it, when Trump's won it in 2016, 2020 with much worse numbers, much worse internal numbers than he has now. Kamala Harris, her campaign, the internal numbers have come out. Jake Tapper said it. It looks horrible in Pennsylvania. She's down by a lot more than the polls are saying, and even the polls are saying it's bad for her. So these are good numbers for Trump in the state of Pennsylvania, and these are real requests. I mean, this is the vote. Obviously it's not the exact thing, but it's just we're showing the decrease. We knew there was going to be a decrease in mail-in, but even if you factor it in terms of percentage, the Democrats are decreasing by a bigger percentage than Republicans in terms of mail-in ballot requests. A lot of these people are going to be voting in person just because the way it is, but still, this is good for Republicans, it's good for Trump, and it's good for potentially winning the state of Pennsylvania. So guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.